And it's funny how there's like nothing in terms of options or training. I know it's a beta, but if you think about it, like I go to training and go to how to play, and there's not even any sort of demonstration or playthrough. So it really feels like how I grew up with Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and the fact that there wasn't even a command list in the game. So you really had to just jump in and find out for yourself. So that's kind of what I'm used to as a kid, to be honest with you. And so I feel kind of right at home here. So here are my initial thoughts on the Avatar Legends fighting game. And this isn't going to be a high level analysis like you're used to me doing, right? Because it's my first time with the game. Barely even touched it or played it. And usually I like to really play a game before I give an opinion on it. This game is amazing. I'm going to say everything that you've already heard other people say. It's a return to the glory days of fighting games. I'm biased in preferring 2D hand-drawn frame-by-frame animation, and you can tell that this is definitely done in that way. Also without AI. One of the things that hand-drawn animation excels at that 3D models don't is you really feel like you become the character. You inject a life into the character, right? You watch somebody like AMB Academy who teaches 2D hand-drawn animation, then this is how he talks, right?
We've got so much going on here that we kind of miss it when you watch it the first time and you think, well, why bother? Well, that's when you're passionate and you really try to put life into something, into a performance, right?
You imbue life into the character. And so here, not even knowing how to really play Zuko, I feel like I'm a martial artist, you know what I mean? You can, without watching the show, you can feel that firebending has a lot of traditional kung fu elements, right? Again, I'm not an expert in any of this. The only thing I'm sort of knowledgeable about is 2D animation. Everything is amazing. The follow through, arcs, the timing, everything is good. So this game, despite being brand new 2D frame by frame animation, it still moves pretty well in motion. When you press multiple sequential buttons, how does the game move and feel? Does it look clunky? You know, like a 2x KO? There's a big difference between quality 2D animation and poor 2D animation. And that comes with the 12 principles of animation, obviously, in which they also talk about it with the Animator Survival Kit by Richard Williams. The follow through the arcs, and especially the ease in and the ease out, which makes a move like this, or especially like this, feels like there's weight to it when it comes to holding the frames here and then releasing it very fast to create that sense of weight, you know? As an animator, I see so many principles being used correctly that it's just rare that you see this. This is rare that you see an actual artistic fighting game, a fighting game that there appears to be a budget for artists who are competent. But for 2D animation, you can't hide behind a program. You can't hide behind a 3D software. You have to draw each frame. Even unlike the background characters, it reminds me of like a King of Fighters or a Fatal Fury, right? And then they look and turn when the character moves. And also they cheer, you know, when you attack. And also they do a different animation when you get hit, right? I'm speaking from personal experience in terms of just a couple months ago, I animated a fully rendered background character for Skullgirls for my own original character, which also does the same thing when it comes to reacting, whether there's a knockdown or reacting on a win state. I just have a lot of high respect for people who do this, because the one time I did it, workload was insane. And so I just have so much respect for people who do this. In terms of the gameplay, it feels like a fighting game that's easy to get into. Now, on the one hand, I like the fighting game that it has a lot of movement, right? When it comes to stuff like this. However, to switch to somebody like Guitar, then you'll see that obviously you can really move, you know? This reminds me of Mugen, honestly, when it comes to every character having a charge mechanic, you know? This is the one thing I keep complaining about in contemporary fighting games that this game does not have an issue with, is you notice many contemporary fighting games you can't move, and that's intentionally so that they can control the gameplay and dictate how you play based on how they balance the game, how they nerf and buff characters. And so the gameplay can be controlled and augmented by the developers. I sound like a tinfoil hat guy, but it's true. When it comes to without movement, then I'm depending on buttons and attacks. If I can move like this. And notice without any dashes, this is kind of how you move in Street Fighter 6, like this, or in Mortal Kombat. The fact that I'm able to multi-dash very easily, because again, without movement, I'm wholly dependent on how good my buttons are, because nobody's going to be moving, so this is very important. But with movement, it's less important. And so then you can start to actually engage in fighting gameplay. So without knowing the game, that already bodes very well. Because again, that's the best defense against oppressive offense, which that's my con for this game. Let me go on to that. When it comes to, it just seems like you can do a lot. It feels very mashy in my opinion, you know? That's the con I can immediately say when I first started playing the game. You go to command list and you go to specials, then you'll notice that the most complex input is just a chrono circle forward. That's a problem to me. To others, they can see it as this, and this is what leans this game towards like a newcomer fighter. When I was young and I also didn't have any fighting game experience, one of the fun things was figuring out what inputs did the characters use for their special, for their launch, for their sweep. You know, everybody was so different, especially in a game like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I keep referencing that because there was a lot of variety into special moves. That was one of those novel things I remember making it feel like every character was special. Every character was like a unique entity, you know? And so having a homogenized chrono circle 4 for everybody, you're leaving meat on the table in terms of giving characters a feeling of individuality. You're sacrificing the novelty aspect on the altar of the hope of newcomers coming into your game. And here are more rapid fire cons. So when you go to command list, why is the selection bar on the top and not in the middle? It's very hard to see where you're looking at and what move you want to see. The UI is messy. I don't like the fact that using the flow state allows you to automatically dodge and weave. It looks so cool, but it's with so little effort. So it feels like I wasn't rewarded for the ability to look cool. And just a simple fact that everything is so meter managed is a negative, you know? To do that, to do the reversals, the flow reversals included. Then when you reach the unbalanced state, then you have the Street Fighter 6 like state to where you're, vulnerable to counter hits, vulnerable to the better throws, can't use any drive moves. It makes sense that they copy off of Street Fighter 6, right? Because in the FGC, the only relevant game is Street Fighter 6. But at the same time is like, that's not a good game that you're copying from. Even when it comes to getting more meter, right? Like this. You see the orbs at the bottom? You don't get it when it comes to regular attacks, but you only get it when it comes to special attacks. That's more kind of gameplay hurting when it comes to they keep wanting you to do big attacks, big attacks, you know? They want you to do this stuff. They don't want you to play managed kind of conservative fighting game style. And consider older fighting games like Street Fighter 4, then any attack you did, you got meter for, whether it's a special attack or whether just a normal A, B, and C. So this game is way too meter managed, and I hope they change that when the actual game comes out. What the industry's been missing is just let me play a fighting game and not an RPG. And another thing I appreciate is the fact that Mike Z is working on the game, and from all accounts from what I hear, he's a genius when it comes to just fighting game theory and knowing how fighting games work. So the games he's designed, like Skullgirls, always feels well made, even if you're not the intended audience. In this case, that goes for me. So having said all that, Avatar kind of feels more like Skullgirls in my opinion, to where it's just very Gatlin based. For Skullgirls, this game's all about offensive oppression. From like a minute, I'm able to do a combo like this, despite not really playing Skullgirls.
Major surgery.
So far, it seems like the schematic of Avatar is more like a Skullgirls or more like a Hyper Dragon Ball Z, which is kind of like a Mugen Meiji game. And of course, this is with limited experience, so that could change. There's a lot of depth to everything they work on. Each character feels very depthy, you know, which makes it to where for the first time, I'm like actually looking forward and anticipating the new DLC characters. I can tell from this game that each character is very heavily worked on, you know? Oh, and the soundtrack is amazing. If the soundtrack is noticeable and not in a bad way, then that's a good thing. Yeah, that's my early thoughts on the Avatar Legends. I don't even have a character yet, but I'm thinking it's going to be Zuko. You know, I like his dive kicks. He feels more like a traditional Street Fighter character. And one of the things that's kind of interesting to me is the fact that I've watched both of these series. I'm a fan of Avatar. So that kind of goes into the decision on who I want to main. There's no way in 7 hells that I will ever play Azula. Simply because of personal bias. I don't like this character. Obviously, I'm a fan of The Last Airbender, so naturally I'm not gonna like this character. And obviously that's despite knowing the complete story of this character, what happened to her mom, her psychosis, but I don't want to play Azula because I don't like Azula. Korra is cool, I guess. The Legend of Korra character is kind of more underwhelming than Last Airbender, simply because The Last Airbender is much better script, and it's just a better story and show. And so it's just like, I don't, because I like this show, I'm going to play who I like in the show. And so it has to be like either like Aang or Zuko, you know what I mean? So my favoritism is coming into this game versus if it's a normal fighting game by Marvel or by Capcom, then it's more about the fighting game character, right? So because of that, I'm kind of locked into Zuko, I guess. So many little things. When you charge, that animation here, when you even do a reset button, you have this little unique wipeout. All those things matter. Those little things is the fighting game. You can't have the big things without the little things. You look at a game like Tekken 8, which has none of the little things, and therefore the big thing is not respected. It's a game that just cuts corners and is not filled out, you know? Obviously, despite being a much smaller studio, you see the follow through of a move like this. And if I keep holding down, then he smoothly goes into his crouching stance, you know? They don't have to do these things, is what I'm saying. This is not necessary. But it's important if people are gonna play your game for hundreds of hours to create those unnecessary things so that your game could look much better in motion, you know? Even a game with a significantly lower budget than Tekken 8, like Avatar, just feels more filled in, you know? Feels more worth your time. By the way, join the Discord if you want to get some games in. I'm trying to build the Discord and have some tournaments and get together people who like to play, you know, new as well as kind of old retro games. So check the link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Oh, and also let me know what you guys think of the Avatar game. So